Well, hello, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody here and on Zoom. And welcome. We have so much to be thankful for. And
so that'll be.
we do have somebody new here today, Myra Cunningham. She attends the early service most of the time. So I don't know if you know everybody, but no, so I thought maybe we'll introduce ourselves if we want to. So I'll start with maybe.
I'm Cynthia Pechtel.
Are you related to Dr. Peck?
I am.
She's his boss.
No, he's a saint up there with me, because he did both my knees. And they're wonderful. Well, you should have popped up and then gotten them.
Shirley Butler, you know me.
I know you
Next
from
to each
Sunday
other
school.
I'm Leanne Smith.
Nice to meet you. Nellie. And Sam.
And Sarah.
And Sarah, yes. And Amy.
All right, and I'm Todd.
And on the Zoom, I think we have Helen.
Helen and
And
Jenny.
Yeah.
let's see. And Jenny. Yeah, okay. I hope Lucretia maybe join us. She usually
We
does.
don't have it.
Okay.
So,
No.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't get that? No, we haven't.
Oh,
did you start? Pass it back.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
so we're passing these envelopes for our
I thought it came from that.
offerings, and we'll explain what they are. I hope we'll have Barbie's usually our treasurer, but I don't, she's not gonna be here today, and I thought she gave the money to somebody else, but I don't think she would. Anyway, so we start off in with the opening prayer, which we read together, and it's on page 37. Follow with me. Christ with me.
Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ where I lie, Christ where I sit, Christ where I rise, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks to me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. Salvation is of the Lord. Salvation is of Christ. May your salvation, Lord, be ever with us. Amen.
Ready for the lesson? Okay. Let me do the share screen thing. So we can have a little bit to look at. Do this. All right. So our story for this month in the Sacred Encounters is the story of Mary and Martha encountering Jesus in the Luke version of the gospel. And Loretta and I were just talking about Mary and Martha listed elsewhere in the gospels. And in John's gospel, there is the story of Mary and Martha, and we are told that Lazarus is their brother, Lazarus, the one that Jesus raised from the dead. So in this story, it is simply Mary and Martha and their encounter with Jesus. And the first thing I want to do is, if you have your book with you, right at the beginning there is the artwork. And I want to just see what you still back in. Okay. What do you see in this artwork of Jesus and Mary and Martha? What gets your attention?
The border, cooking and cleaning.
All around the border is
The broom, they give you
food, utensils, brooms,
Yep.
Yep.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then Mary is looking at Martha. I would think.
Martha's got a
It depends on
bread,
which
some
one
kind
is
of
Mary.
food.
Yeah.
right, Martha has a
Evil
basket
eye.
of bread.
Well, they all,
Yeah.
their eyes are.
She's
Yeah,
looking
their
at the
eyes are
bread
weird.
and Mary's looking at Jesus.
Jesus, uh-huh.
Okay. She's looking at the bread.
Martha doesn't look happy.
No.
Nope.
Which one does?
Mary on the right there looks a little mesmerized.
She's staring into Jesus' eyes.
Mhm.
So casual too. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, this is a depiction of first century Palestine where comfortable chairs like we're sitting in, haha,
I was.
were not created. And there were just cushions on the floor for people to sit and pass around whatever they were eating or whatever they were doing. They didn't have coffee tables down low, but yeah, so a very relaxed, informal looking atmosphere.
It's interesting that one of the women has a head covering and the other one doesn't.
Ah,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never noticed that, yeah. Well, of course, she's been working, so, you know, she needed some.
so you're saying that's a working head covering? Goes with her apron,
That's the work hat.
work hat, okay?
Well, she's been cooking, so there'll be steam and stuff coming up. She's been using the broom, so there'll be dust. So I guess she. Oh, that's the
We'll get
first
to that
time I ever thought of that.
I never noticed.
All right, anybody else see anything of interest?
I think Martha is concerned about whether her bread's good enough or not.
Ah,
I would say you're right.
it's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
broken or
And
anything
with
yet,
the
so
story
she's
going
still
into
watching,
that, I would say
Yeah.
you're very right. Yeah.
I
watching for
mean,
the reaction.
Mary
Yeah.
is looking at Jesus
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
Martha is looking at her bread like, oh, is this gonna be good enough?
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the text then. And the text this month is very brief, but we're gonna take it about a verse at a time. And just kind of break it down. And so I'm gonna read it to you. Verse 38 says, now as they went on their way, that is obviously Jesus, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him. And other ancient authorities add to this text, welcomed him into her home. Whoa. Think about this. First century Palestine, how many women had homes? Not too many. But interestingly, several of the women that Jesus interacted with,
We're
Yeah.
saying,
Had
yeah, we're
money.
saying.
mhm,
They had money, didn't they?
it really sounds like that. I mean, you talk about Lydia, the seller of
Yeah.
purple cloth,
Mhm.
was one of the ones that welcomed the disciples into her home. And we know from the history of purple cloth, which was the color of royalty, and the fact that it was very expensive to make because you actually had to go collect tiny sea crustaceans and take their major life vein to get the deep dye of their blood that made purple. You couldn't get it any other way. You didn't go to the grocery store and get red and blue food color and mix it together or go get some rich dye. They didn't have such a thing. And the only way they could make purple cloth was by collecting thousands of little crustaceans from the sea.
Yeah, I read where it was a very nasty business. So her home would have been not a good place to be.
Like the boiled shrimp pile left. Okay. But the fact that this Martha seems, she has a home, and I'm guessing that in that culture, that would in some ways ruffle the feathers of the patriarchy of the culture of that day. Not that they could do anything about it, because she owned the home, she had the money, it was hers. But then, in addition to that, to have Jesus as her welcome guest in her home was also pretty amazing. But as we said, a number of the folks in the New Testament who welcomed Jesus and his disciples are women. All right, so then the next verse says, she, that is Martha, had a sister named Mary who sat at Jesus's feet and listened to what he was saying. Other ancient versions of that scripture also say that she sat at the Lord's feet, indicating that obviously the gospel writer recognizes Jesus as the Lord. So Luke's not pulling any punches. He knows that Jesus is the Messiah, and the sister in this story, who apparently didn't own the home, is sitting at his feet. Now, sitting at his feet is actually a description of what students of rabbis do. That's how you learn. You sit at the feet of the master, the rabbi. So she's sitting at his feet like an eager student that's longing to be blessed by the wisdom of a rabbi. But guess what? Women were not allowed to sit at the feet of rabbis.
They had to meet privately with them, didn't they? Behind closed doors?
Yeah, it was not allowed in public by the culture. So you got two rule breakers here, one owning the house and one sitting at a rabbi's feet. And I think I have told you all before, back when Mary Snowden was still alive, we were doing one of our Bible studies and it was on Mary. And as I was looking it up and studying, I realized that Mary was a form of the Hebrew word Miriam, which means rebellious one. So I texted Mary Snowden and I said, now I know, Mary, this is what your name means. And she laughed. But yeah, here's Mary, the rebellious one, who is sitting at Jesus's feet. And then the story takes a little turn and said, Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Notice that Luke doesn't tell us what Martha's many tasks were, although Sarah thinks there was cleaning and cooking going on, and whoever did the artwork obviously had that same notion. But through the centuries of our biblical scholarship, influenced by almost exclusively male interpreters who were of the culture and scholars, we indeed have been led to believe that Martha's work was primarily, if not exclusively, kitchen work. Now, here's a modern story I have for you. If you'll look up there, you can see a soccer referee on the screen holding up a red card. The soccer referee is female, and this is a men's FIFA soccer match. Okay, so this German female soccer referee is giving a red card to a player on the team from Turkey. And you know what he came up and said to her when she red carded him? You should stick to the kitchen. So when she filed her report at the end of the game, she put that in the report. And you know what FIFA did? They suspended that player for 5 matches.
Wow.
And they required him during his suspension to officiate a women's soccer game. Yes.
That's good.
That lady looks like she.
I wouldn't have argued with her
Yeah.
personally.
Serious.
Yeah.
All right, so I have one other picture for you that describes the culture that basically the whole world grew up in. This is a picture of a physician, James Berry. And James Berry was a graduate of the University of Edinburgh School of Medicine in the early 19th century. And somewhere between 1815 and 1821, Barry was stationed in Uganda. And there Barry performed the first successful cesarean section in Africa,
Oh, wow.
where both mother and child survived.
Oh, wow.
This was very early on.
Hmm.
So Barry continued to serve in the British military for an entire career. And it turns out that after Barry died as an inspector general, which would be the equivalent of a brigadier general in the US military, the British Army hid the records and accomplishments of Dr. Barry for almost 100 years, I'm told. You know why? Because Barry wasn't a man.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yes, her name was actually, trying to remember what it was, Miranda. And she had a different last name, but the only way she could get into medical school
Was through being
in the
a
19th century was to be a man. And she got out of medical school and served in the army, and the only way she could serve in the army was
To be
as a man. They never knew until the autopsy after she died.
Oh, my word.
And they were so embarrassed by that they just kind of
Yeah, so that just
put it in a
didn't get
drawer and
mentioned.
closed the drawer for about 100 years, I'm told.
Huh.
Wow.
That is,
Yeah.
that is.
Amazing thing to me. Let me see it. Did I write down the name? No. Her birth name was Margaret Ann Buckley, but she found and went by the name James Miranda something Barry. My daughter has a good friend from high school named Miranda Barry.
I wonder how she was able to
I don't know.
change her name and everything.
Are you
If you
olive
ordered-
oiling?
Yes, if you ordered olive oil, it's in the conference room with your name on it, Loretta
All
Okay.
right,
and Nellie. Okay,
Gotcha.
there you go.
all
I
right.
thought I would just interrupt while you all were here.
Might as well. Now we have it recorded.
Yeah.
Who's there? Is Jan Wilford there?
No, she
No,
does not.
No, Jenny and Helen are.
Okay, all right. I don't think they ordered any, so there we are.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, so that's a couple of women who
Wow,
That's interesting.
were strong and bucked the culture,
that's amazing.
which this is what I thought of when I read this story of these two women. So-
So you said her real name was Margaret Ann Buckley?
Margaret Ann, yeah, I think it's Bulkley, Bulkley. But you can look up,
And then, but she went as Miranda?
James Miranda.
James Miranda, and there's another name. Barry, Barry. You can look up the story.
Well, now was she Scottish then? You said he went.
Yes,
She went
Yes, she was
to
from-
Edinburgh, yeah.
Scotland, went to University of Edinburgh Medical School, and then served in the British Army in Africa.
Stuart.
Stewart, that's it, yes. Miranda, James Miranda Stewart Barry, Stuart, I believe. Thanks, Jim.
Very interesting.
Okay. So the last verse, the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but few things are needed, indeed, only one. And other ancient authorities read, only one thing is needed. And then his closing line is, Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. So, one of the things that is very difficult for us or anybody else to discern from stories that were written long ago, particularly in cultures that we really have no direct connection with, we're so far away from that culture, that it's hard to understand exactly what's going on in these stories. And that's what the author of this lesson is talking about, is how we've sort of branded it with our own cultural understanding. And it's hard to tell in faraway cultures in ancient times exactly what the whole point of the story is, or what they're trying to get across, or what Jesus meant by what he said. So the tone of what he said, which is never given to us in writing. I mean, they didn't even have italics or all caps or any of that stuff to let us know, what they were really trying to say. And here's something that's I thought was pretty funny. I saw a while back, and when I was reading this, I thought, yeah, this applies to this. Someone once said that 2,000 years from now, people will not understand the difference between what they call butt dial with your phone and booty call. And that's exactly why the Bible is hard to understand.
Yeah,
Because you gotta be in the culture
Yeah.
to understand what's being said.
Mhm.
And so as I started thinking about that and thinking about how we might interpret that and try and peel back a little of our own, not only current cultural understanding, but all the history of that culture, the doctors who couldn't go to medical school and the soccer referees and, all that sort of thing. I actually went back and found something that I had written about 2 or 3 years ago about this particular text, which is really a more traditional interpretation of the text, with only what I would call a slight nod towards civility between the characters in the text. So I want to start by sharing that with you. And I actually have a copy of it that I'll give to you to take home with you. But I wanted you to just hear what I wrote a couple years ago. And then after studying this lesson and think about it some more, I rewrote it a little better to match, I think, perhaps what Jesus might have actually been trying to say. Okay. So this is my first interpretation of the text, which is much more culturally connected to our own culture and how we see it, the whole kitchen work and that sort of stuff. Martha, Martha, dear, might you be distracted? What's this unspoken dream on which you've acted? What drives your heart and sparks your mind? When you search, what do you find? The voice that whispers from deep within, where does it say you should begin? Has Mary done something or not that ties your stomach in a knot? Yes, we're hungry, that'll always be, but the day will come when you can't sit with me. Mary's soul seems to have found a place where her deepest desire is for unending grace. That's a hunger no bread can meet. It'll only be satisfied sitting at my feet. So take off your apron and join us, dear. Feast on this meal while the word is near. That's kind of how our culture interprets that sort of thing. But I want to try another interpretation, which I wrote, as I said, after studying this, leaning in a little more toward both Martha and Mary's gifts and their hearts, because I think they were both doing what needed to be done. And our interpretation of, unpacking it so that Mary is the winner of the Jesus Olympics and Martha gets a distant second place, I think might be a little inappropriate. All right, so here's another version. Mary, quite deeply relaxed. How much have you piled on Martha's back? What part of hospitality do you not comprehend? What part of the bargain is sagging from your end? When did Jesus last have a meal? How tired are his feet? What else does he feel? A voice says, stop the show, life's not a competition. We all have to find our own neutral position. Jesus loves them both like he loves you and me. Let's read it in a way that sets us all free. Free to be me, free to be you, free to use our gifts and to ourselves be true. Jesus empowered the women all around him in a culture refusing to even recognize them. The church has grown and benefited from sages, strong women of God who carried it for ages. Thanks be to the Holy for giving us strong queens who played by God's rules to fulfill our sacred dreams. The end.
One I like better.
Yeah.
Do you think we can identify with one or the other?
Oh, yeah, I think we always have.
Yeah.
At some point, after all the years of thinking of this wrongly, I guess, I finally realized that if Martha had given to Jesus, everything would have been taken care of. If she had had the faith at that point in time that Mary had, then it would have been, the food would have been everything would have happened and been taken care of. And I kind of came at peace with it after I put it in that perspective,
Yeah.
that, I don't think he was necessary, he was telling her, you've got to have faith in me too. And if you had sat here with Mary and listened and all, then everything would have worked out. And I think that's one way we, kind of have to look at it. It's
And you look at the bread, now that I look at it again, it's like, she's going, but who's gonna provide the bread? And he's going, I'm providing it, right?
That's right, yeah, yeah.
If I'm not doing this work, who's gonna do it? And he said, I will take care of it.
Well, that was my concept after many years of wrong with it.
Well, I feel that Jesus was speaking on a spiritual level and Martha was on a physical level.
Yeah,
Because welcoming people into the home after they've been tramping around the desert or wherever all those times, they're tired, hungry, and it's a pleasure to be welcomed that way. So she was doing what she knew how to do. And whether she thought about the spiritual or not, I don't know, but that's how I looked at it. She was doing what she had to do.
but if she was Lazarus' sister and saw him raised from the dead, she had to believe.
Going to John.
That's true.
I mean,
So when is this supposed to be? Before Lazarus or?
oh, well, now that's a thought, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
That's in
know.
a different gospel, but
And Luke
having this
doesn't even
discussion
mention
reminds me
Lazarus.
of a
No,
drawing I
this one
saw
didn't.
of
although they were
Jesus sitting up on the
brothers
rock
and
and all the
sisters, it didn't.
disciples around him, and he
But that's the
says,
thought, was it
"Now
before
listen.
or after?"
I want y'all to pay attention. I don't want there to be 4 versions of this."
Yeah, yeah.
And there are 4 versions of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard. You can't just go say, well, this was before Lazarus or after Lazarus.
No.
But as I was telling Loretta,
That is,
it appears that they are both from Mary and Martha in this story and in John are both from probably the village of Bethany, which is what John says. And so it almost sounds like there is a connection to Lazarus, but not in this story. Lazarus was not needed.
No, that's true.
Nellie.
There's a part here that I've highlighted that I did not understand. It's on page 40. The bottom of the first column. It says, while we may not traditionally categorize Martha's encounter with Jesus as a sacred one, she did indeed have one. A sacred encounter that looked different from Mary's. The reason why Luke does not detail exactly what Martha was doing and why Jesus chose to reprimand her could be that Martha was engaged in a leadership role in the church. She may have been serving the Eucharist or planning Jesus's itinerary. What does that mean?
Well, if, as we said earlier, a
She
lot
was
of the
baking the
people
bread for
who were
communion.
supporting Jesus in the early days and as the church was developing were women, she may have had a role in that. But there's no evidence
Yeah.
but it's a possibility, but there's no textual evidence of that in this story or anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's just an idea that we realize so many women supported him and were involved and often were with him,
Mhm.
that they very well could have had leadership roles in the church as it was being developed, because they met in houses, and the ones with houses would be a place where they could meet.
But Jesus invited her to sit at his feet too. He didn't say go on and get something to eat, pick something to eat, you know.
Well, now he didn't, he invited her after she said what she said.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, I meant that, yeah.
But he may not have invited her before the meal was fixed. He was hungry.
Yeah, but women then were trained to serve. They.
Well,
they
that's
were-
what we were
they
talking,
served,
yeah, we were talking about
So
that.
this is what she
Right.
knew to do
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
she welcomed them.
Mhm.
Right.
That's basically what we all do, I think.
I mean, we're still doing it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Good point.
But he was saying, time is limited, come join us, and then
Yeah, and
The
it'll
dishes
take
will
care of
wait,
itself.
that.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
been
if
my
you
theory.
believe it will take care of itself.
Yeah. Any other
Well,
comments? Thank you.
Yeah, if they had both realized how short a time they had with him, things would have
Yeah.
been different.
That would, yeah, true.
Well, any other comments? Precious, thank you. It was very interesting.